equivalent fractions in simplest form. If you have a fraction that looks like this, (10/12), we need to find something that's equivalent, meaning equals the same. We talked about things that go, whatever you do to the top, you do to the bottom. We have to, right? So in order to find an equivalent fraction, all I got to do is multiply the top by 2, multiply the bottom by 2, and I end up with 20/24. That's equivalent. It equals the same. Also, 10/12, if I could do this, I could do 10/12, I could divide by 2, and I end up with 5/6 to prove it. Here, calculator. What is 10 divided by 12? .83 repeating. Okay. What's 20 divided by 24? Same thing, 0.83 repeating. What's 5 divided by 6? What do you think it's going to be? 0.83 repeating. Okay. 10/12 is equivalent to 20/24, which is equivalent to 5/6. Fractions that basically they equal the same. Fractions that represent the same value are equivalent fractions. So 1/2, 2/4, 4/8 are all equivalent. If you did the math, if you did 1 divided by 2, what would you get? 0.5. What if you did 2 divided by 4? 0.5. What if you did 4 divided by 8? 0.5. They're all equivalent fractions. Oops. A visual representation of this. 1/2 of this pizza or pie or cookie, whatever you want. 1 of 2. 1/2 is shaded red. 2/4 is shaded red. 4/8 is shaded red. It's all the same. It all covers the same size area, doesn't it? They're equivalent. They all equal the same. If we did it, we could have 8/16. We could cut it into 16ths. It would still cover the same amount. You're going to be asked to find 2 equivalent fractions for certain numbers. Find 2 equivalent fractions for 4/6. Well, here's what we could do. We have a couple of choices. We could have 4/6. So, we have a choice. We can divide top and bottom by something. We could multiply top and bottom by something. Let's divide. Oh. Divided by 2. Divide top and bottom by 2. We end up with 2/3. 4/6 is equivalent to 2/3. Now, our other option is we could multiply. So if instead of multiplying, or instead of dividing, let's multiply. So we have 4/6, and we can multiply by 2, multiply by 2, and we end up with 8/12. That is also equivalent. Here's the deal. I don't want you to do this. If it says find 2 equivalent fractions, I don't want you to multiply by 2 and then take this and do this. You can. It's legal. It works. You could have then 16/24, and that is also equivalent, because if you divided it out, 16 divided by 24, it would work. But what happens? What happens if somehow you made a mistake with this 4 times 2, this original one, and let's just say instead of 8, you said it was 10. And then when you did, then you multiplied the next one and you said this was 20. Now you have 2 wrong answers. I would always go back to the original, 4/6. That's how I would do it, just in case you happen to make a mistake with your multiplication the first time. It's just an easy way to avoid another mistake. You're also going to have problems that look like this. Find the missing number that makes the fractions equivalent. What do we got here? We have to find an equivalent fraction. What do we got? 12. How do you know it's 12? Because 5 times 4 equals 20, and whatever you do to the top equals bottom. So 5 times 4 is 20, so we got to multiply this one by 4. So we end up with 12 up here. This is so much fun. What goes there? 100. Because 4 times 80 is, or 4 times what is 80? 20. So 5 times 20 is 100. Christian? 9. 9 times 3 is 27. 3 times 3 is 9. It's not really a lot of fun. I'm sick with this. I know. I don't want to do it anymore. Okay. We also need to talk about simplest form. Every fraction has one equivalent fraction that is called simplest form. I want fractions, unless we're finding equivalent fractions, for the most part, I want you to make them in simplest form. The way we find simplest form is we divide top and bottom by the greatest common factor. And the way that we know things are already in simplest form is if the greatest common factor is already 1. So if we look at this, we have 20 over 48. A lot of you would do this. A lot of you would go this and then divide this by 2, and then we would divide the bottom by 2, and you end up with 10 over 24, and then you would call it done. Good enough. Good night. See you later. However, I can tell by looking at 10 over 24 that something is wrong. How do I know something isn't quite right?
They're both even and can both still be divided.
They're both even. They are both even. So because they're both even, I know I can still divide this by 2, divide by 2, and end up with 5 over 12. There is simplest form. It would have been a lot easier to divide top and bottom by 4 to begin with, right? I need to be able to know what the greatest common factor is. If I know the greatest common factor, I know I'm going to have the simplest form. Okay? On your whiteboards, I want you, we can use prime factorization to find all of that. So if you want to look at this, in order to take 20 over 48, we could use prime factorization, and the prime factors of going to have a common thing of two column. You end up dividing by that. On your whiteboards, what's the simplest form of that problem right there? Write it down. Show me. Simplest form. The simplest form of this problem is it's 7/10. How do we know? How do we know? 7's a prime number? Oh yeah? That's how we know? Huh. What about this problem? 13's prime. Isn't it? That's not in simplest form. Because I can do this. Has nothing. Be careful. All of you. Be very, very careful. Just because you have a prime number or an odd number, it does not mean it's in simplest form. The only way we know if it's its simplest form is if the greatest common factor between the two of them is 1. And the greatest common factor between those two is 1. The greatest common factor between these two is 13. Jonathan.
On our homework, if we have to write out sentences, do you want us to say what the number stands for? Do you want us to say
You don't have to write out sentences. On your whiteboards, I want you to show me the simplest form of 12/16. If you don't use greatest common factor to find this answer, I guarantee you that 90% of the people in this room are going to get this particular problem wrong. You're going to look at that and you're going to, oh, they're both even, so I can divide by 2. And I end up with 13/26. You see, 13/26 right there. You end up with a prime number on the top, prime odd number on top. A bunch of you are going to go, ooh, there's the answer. We're done. And we already established that 13/26 is not simplest form. What I should have done in this situation is I should have found the greatest common factor between 26 and 52. And the best way to do that is this. What is it? All right. This 52. Oh, yeah. And then you come up, and then what you'll do, hey, I'm telling you, you need to find the greatest common factor. So you do this, so you make your little list. You got 52, you have what? 2, 2, and 13. And then my next one is 26. I have 2 and 13. So my full columns are 2 and 2 times 13, which is 26. My actual greatest common factor for those two numbers is 26. So I should be able to divide top and bottom by 26. Okay? These are the kind of problems you're going to do on your homework. I tell you, use greatest common factor when simplifying. Your homework, I want you to do, is written up on the board. It's page 188, 12 to 48 even.